Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Menopause Conversations podcast. My name is Angela Council, your host for this podcast, and we are in the summer season. That's right. I'm taking a little bit of a break over the end of 2022, beginning of 2023 from recording new episodes. But what I thought I'd do, rather than leave you with nothing to listen to over this break, I thought I would share with you some of my favourite episodes from guests that I've had in the past. Now, I realised a few weeks ago that I've recorded over 100 episodes, and in that time I have spoken to some absolutely fantastic women, hearing their stories, learning about what they're doing, and just simply having a really great chat with them. So I thought you might enjoy listening to some of them too. And particularly if you're a new listener to the podcast, you probably haven't heard some of these. Now, you will notice that I refer to the podcast as the Wise Women's Conversations podcast because that's what it used to be called before. But it's the same podcast. All they did was change its name. So please listen to this episode, enjoy it, and let me know what you think. Or why not join me over in the Menopause Conversations Facebook group, where we have more conversations and where you'll find more podcast recordings over there to have a listen to as well. So have a great break. I'll be back recording new live episodes in 2023, but enjoy some of my favorites in the meantime. Bye for now. Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of Wise Women's Conversations. And this week, and I say this every single week with every guest, but this guest is very special. So Franziska Iseli has been a dear friend of mine for many, many years. She's actually been a mentor. She's been a coach. And I've worked with her over the years with building my business, but there's so much more to Franziska than just marketing, which is what her business is all about. She's a beautiful human being and she has the biggest heart in the world. And she's recently released a book called The Courage Map, and it's the 13 principles for living courageously. Now, Franziska does this so well. About 2 years ago, she decided to jump on a motorbike and ride across what's known as the Silk Road. And that's in a part of the world which I really don't know a lot about. It's where all the stands are, all the stand countries are, and Iran and all of that. So she did eventually team up with Mike, who was a mechanic, and her ex-husband came with her as well, so that she didn't do the whole journey on her own, but parts of the journey she did do on her own as a single female on the back of a motorbike going into some of these countries which don't always have the best reputation because there's a lot of drug trade going on. But what Franziska was looking for when she was on this journey were moments of humanity, and she found so many of them. She put herself in a place where her heart was open to receive these moments, and people along the way were giving her food. When she had accidents on the bike, they were helping her, they were rebuilding her bike. She was able to travel along one of what is known as one of the notorious highways in the world and still find help. And as Franziska was going on this journey, this is when she wrote the book. And she spoke about, the different stories of what happened on that journey, what she learned, the people she met. And we're going to talk to Franziska today about some of that. And I really hope that you love listening to her because she is an absolutely beautiful woman. You will notice she's got a bit of an accent. She's a Swazi, so she's a Swiss Aussie. And she's got a beautiful sense of humor, and she's always looking for the good in everyone. So I truly hope that you enjoy listening to this conversation that I have with Franziska. And I'll be back at the end to have a bit more of a chat with you. Bye for now. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Wise Women's Conversations. And this week is going to be an absolutely fun adventure because Franziska is a really good friend of mine, but she is all about fun and she's all about adventure. And today we're going to have a chat to her about her book called The Courage Map.
and she's going to share with us a few things about a journey that she's been on in the last, I don't know, probably 18 months ago, a month or so, as she's decided to ride a motorbike down the Silk Road. And I didn't even know what the Silk Road is. And so she's going to share with us, and she's going to talk to us about all these different countries that, once again, I didn't even know existed. So hi, Franziska.
Hey, Angela. I am so happy to speak to you again. Finally, it's been so long. It's always
been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I always love talking to you. So this is really good.
So share with our audience who you are and how you got to be doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, so who I am, I have a name, and it's always such a great question, who are you? Because you can respond this in all sorts of ways. I'm a rebel, I'm a little bit irreverent, I'm a Swazi. Oh, yes, you know this. I am a Swazi, so I'm a Swiss-born Aussie now. I grew up in Switzerland and have been in Australia for 15 years, still have an accent, and obviously geography in Australia I was struggling with. And I run a few businesses. The one that most people know about is called Basic Bananas. It's a marketing mentoring business, and Ocean Lovers is another one of my passion businesses. It's only a startup, and where we are all about ocean conservation. And the Business Hood is a brand consultancy. Angela knows all of these ventures and has been involved with us forever and ever and ever. I reckon you're one of our first customers 11 years ago.
Been there for a long time.
Yes, we miss you. And yeah, and I love adventures. And so this book that I believe we're going to share some insights from is my third book, and it's very different to my other two from before. The two previous ones were all about business and marketing and branding, and this one here is all about courage. So it's a lot more of a personal journey and sharing that Silk Road journey on the motorbike and lessons from that road trip.
Yeah. So, and yeah, when I've just read the Courage Map, and it was so much more about you, and it is a complete, it's different to the first two books, but this is really about you, and it really, to me, embodied who you are. And I'm going to ask you a few questions basically from some of the stuff that I got from the book. But number one, because I've known you for so long, I knew that one of your dreams was to be invited to Richard Branson's island.
Yes.
And Richard Branson wrote the foreword of this book.
Yes. Oh my God, you have a memory, an amazing memory. You know what? This is so cool. So yes, that's so interesting that you know that.
I've known you a long time.
You have known me since I'm pretty much out of my Pampers, or what to call them, and nappies, and almost. And yes, so when I first started the first business about 12 years ago, the very, very first business was called Global Beat, which we then rebranded into Basic Bananas. So we could say it was a bit of a failure, the first business. And then Basic Bananas was born about 11 years ago. And Richard Branson's book, Losing My Virginity, was one of my biggest inspirations on how I wanted to run a business. And then I've always had this dream that I wanted to go to his island, Necker Island. He's got an island in the British Virgin Islands and in the Caribbean. And I wanted to be invited. I didn't want to go and pay a silly amount of money, because you can do that. And I didn't want to do that. I just thought, you know what, I want to be invited to go. And so last year I got invited to go as part of a tech challenge with a guy I know who runs this global tech challenge. And I got invited to go for a week with a few of my friends. And while I was there, I already had the manuscript finished for this book. And before I even got invited, and I knew I was going to be invited, when I wrote the manuscript about 2 years ago, I started working on this book. I wrote on the second page. First page was the title. Second page, I wrote Foreword by Richard Branson. And when I gave the manuscript to my editor, this was before I had a publisher, I got my editor to work on it, and she said, "Oh, is Branson writing your foreword?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." She's like, "Yeah, good luck with that." She didn't believe me. And I knew the only way I can ever get close to him saying yes is I just have to ask him. So while I was on Necker Island for a week, we had a few conversations about this motorbike trip. And I didn't want to just ask him and be a fangirl. So I just, had conversations with him about different things and the ocean and ocean conservation and adventures. And then on the second last day, he was sitting there reading a paper, and I thought, this is the last chance I have to actually ask him if he would be interested to write the foreword, because I won't see him anymore after, and he's really hard to get hold of. So I just sat down next to him and we spoke a little bit more about ocean conservation and the projects we're doing with ocean lovers. And then I just asked him, I was super nervous, my heart was racing, and I said, look, Richard, I know you get asked a lot of these requests, and I do feel a little bit weird asking, but would you be interested in writing the foreword for my next book, which is on the motorbike journey and courage? And then he looked at me and he said, well, Franziska, I really like what you do, and I like what you're all about. I do get a lot of these requests, and I only write one of these forewords per year. So I thought, okay, he's brushing me off. And he said, just send it to me. Send it to me and I'll take a look. And I'm like, this is sort of his way of saying, yeah, but no. So I sent it to him. And then about 2 months later, he got back to me and said, hey, it would be my pleasure to write the foreword. And then another maybe 4 weeks passed and he sent me the foreword, which is really beautiful.
So that was, obviously that took a lot of courage. I mean, actually, let's just talk about that. Why do we put some people up on pedestals? So, I mean, you've met the man, and from what I understand, he's quite, he's nice to get on with. So why do we put people up on pedestal, and then why does it become a big leap then to ask for something?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I normally don't put people on a pedestal. He's the only guy in the entire world. I've met a lot of interesting people that people would put on a pedestal. One example, I didn't even know, but I think because I'm a bit irreverent, I normally don't put people on a pedestal, and it's normally very easy for me to just ask and approach someone. So remember when I first moved to Australia, I was at a bar, I was at some surf magazine opening thing in DY, and I was at the bar talking to this guy about music, and then my girlfriend came over and she said to the guy that I was talking to, she said, oh, Franziska also plays the saxophone. And I said to the guy that I've been talking to for the last hour or so, I said, oh, do you play the saxophone? And then my friend said, yeah, he's from In Excess. He's Kurt from In Excess. I'm like, oh, okay. Right. And then we just kept talking, and the guy was obviously very happy that I had no idea who he was until I was told who he was, and then it was still just a normal conversation. So I normally don't put people on a pedestal, so I can't really tell you why. But I think with Branson, as I mentioned, I was and maybe still am definitely a little bit of a fangirl. It's just, I don't know why. I don't know. I can't answer the question.
That's all right. So tell us about your trip that the book was written about. So the Courage Map was written about this trip, and I can remember you posting a post on Facebook, and this was probably 3 years ago, and you said, I'm thinking of riding the Silk Road. Has anybody ever done it, and what can you tell me about it? And then I think a few weeks later was, I'm thinking of riding across Iran. Has anyone ever done it? And because everyone's going, don't do it, it's dangerous, and because not only were you going to ride across Iran, as we discover, you were going to try and ride across it on your own, which is a woman on your own riding across Iran. How did all that come about? Why all of a sudden did you want to do that? Or, why? I mean, because that's an adventure, and I know how adventurous you are, but why the Silk Road? Why Iran?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So a few different reasons. The reasons why Iran is one, that was before things got a little bit more challenging to get into Iran with politics and now also COVID. And one of the reasons is I've always been called by this Persian culture. I've always been intrigued by it, the history, the poetry, the architecture. I love it. And so that was one reason I felt really called to go explore Iran. The second reason is because I also wanted to show people by walking the talk that a lot of the stuff that we hear in the media about cultures is so exaggerated, is so not true, and these are singular small cases of things that do happen in certain countries. That doesn't mean that the whole culture is like that. So I wanted to to almost prove to people that we need to be less ignorant about what's going on outside of where we live. And I thought the best way to do that is to just go through places like these on my own, where I can show moments of humanity, where I can show all these incredible moments with people that are beautiful. And of course, there's a small risk involved, but I looked into it and I knew that I would be okay. I knew that I would be okay, unless, of course, the worst happens, but I knew that most likely I would be okay. Now, why the journey in the first place, the Silk Road journey? I went through a little bit of an early midlife crisis, I think. And this is not something I talk about a lot. And now, I think 2 years later, I feel more comfortable sharing it. But about 2.5 or 3 years ago, probably, I started to question a few things in my life, including my marriage. And I just needed time to think about what I wanted to do. And when you are riding a motorbike, you have so much helmet time. You're always in your helmet and alone with your thoughts. It's like, okay, what's going on? And I wanted to do it in a way that also is challenging me physically and mentally and emotionally. And so I just suddenly had this really bad idea, the worst idea, to ride a motorbike from Switzerland, where I grew up, and send a motorbike to my mom's house, which she was not so excited about, and ride it through Eastern Europe and then into Central Asia and into Asia. And that was sort of the reason, is because I wanted to just think a lot and figure out what I wanted to do.
And you weren't really what you would call a very experienced motorbike rider either, were you?
No, I can, especially, I mean, I'm okay. I'm an okay motorbike rider, but I'm definitely not good at maintenance. So I'm a girl, and I'm not that good at, all the maintenance stuff. So what happened is I was going to do it on my own, and I bought a motorbike. I sent it to my mom's house, and she said, "Hey, I just received a motorbike. It just got to my place. What's going on?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm going on a little adventure." And she said, "Okay, where are you going?" And I said, "Oh, just to Kazakhstan, through Iran, nothing major." And she obviously initially was not very excited about that, understandably. And then, luckily now, so I was embarking on this journey in June. I was in the Bahamas at an ocean conservation event for entrepreneurs. In February, I met a guy there, Mike, and his girlfriend, Edika. And we had dinner together with a bunch of entrepreneurs and started talking about motorbike, Mike and I. And then I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm going to go on the Silk Road journey." And he's like, "No way." He's like, "I've always wanted to do this. I never found anyone crazy enough to come with me. Can I come?" And I look at him, I'm like, "I just met you 5 minutes ago. I don't know if you're weird or crazy or what. I don't know. This is a little bit random." And then he said, "How about we just chat about it a little bit more? And also, I don't think you should go on your own. There are a few countries that you probably don't want to be on your own as a blondie female." And so we just started talking, and luckily I said yes to him joining, because he's also a bike mechanic. And I had so many bike breakdowns and issues that I wouldn't have solved them on my own because I'm not good at it, but I would have met people that would have probably helped me a little bit.
So let's now get on to the journey and how you wrote the courage map, because you said, "I met people along the way," and this is part of what you talk about in the courage map, because you did, and you've got a series of videos which document this journey as well, and I've been watching the videos. The last one just came out a couple of days ago. How is it that you can set off on a journey to places that many people have never even heard of, all these Kakistans and all these Stan countries that never even heard of, and you don't speak the language? I know you speak 4 languages, don't you?
Yeah, 5, but
five.
not so much Russian, or they speak Russian in those.
Yeah, so you don't really speak the language, and a lot of times you are kind of almost in the middle of nowhere, and you need to be able to negotiate your way to different places, or you need to get help. And then you talk about this in the courage map, and these are, because you've got 13 principles, these are some of the principles. How is it that you are able to, it all works out? It always works out.
It really does. It really does. And even when things don't work out, when I had moments like being stuck at the border of Iran, where I was standing there and I looked at my bike and I'm like, I'm just gonna kick you off the cliff right here, and I'm gonna take a bus and ride through Iran, because I got denied at the border. And so sometimes I had moments, or when I did have an accident, these were not things that I planned or wanted to happen, but somehow they always worked out perfectly. And one of the principles in the book that I talk about, that I know you are totally also aligned with, that is to trust that the universe always has your back. So I believe that going on a journey like this, or even going through life like this, and you do this too, is with an open heart. Just go through life and through journeys, adventures, with an open heart, and trust that the universe always has your back. Because then when you have a rough plan maybe in life, but sometimes shizzle happens. You've had a lot of that. Sometimes shizzle happens and you're not going left, you're now going right, because you have to. And we can either kick and scream at it, and which I sometimes did for a few minutes, and then I'm like, oh, wait a second, I can't control this outcome or this happening, so I might as well just skip instead of cry or crawl. And I think this is probably the reason why, also not knowing the languages, but always the entire journey, even though also the cultures were so different, a lot of these cultures were Muslim, and I'm a blondie. I didn't wear a scarf. I mean, I respected the cultures, and I was wearing long sleeve pants in a lot of the places where I did feel like this is better to be respectful of the cultures. But very different cultures and different places we've all come from, I always felt safe with everyone, with men and women. I always felt supported. And I think it's for two reasons. One, when you come on a motorbike, you're so vulnerable, you're so exposed. It's very raw, because you're not inside something. It's just
no
exposed.
protection.
Also, no protection. Also, all your luggage is sort of on the bike. Everyone can steal everything from you if they want to. Never had a thing stolen. And secondly, just having an open heart and not judging anyone or anything, just showing up. And then sign language was usually the way we rolled, or also Google Translate sometimes when somebody wanted to have, pretty much everybody wanted to have a conversation, and they just started chatting at you in Russian or Tajik or any of the languages, Turkish. And we just normally took out the Google Translator. Everyone also wanted to take selfies. Everyone took selfies and then started chatting away, and we just had the Google Translate or the sign language.
So let's talk a little bit about trust, because there's one thing to trust the universe, but and you write about this, trust, it's not about trusting the universe. It's about trusting yourself first, isn't it? Let's talk about that. How did you develop that self-trust? Because I know that from a very young age, you left home and you traveled to South America on your own. Or I think you were 16. Yeah. And it's like most of us, once again, because we have the vision of what we believe South America would be like. And for a young 16-year-old girl to be traveling on her own, I mean, you had to have something within you that meant that you knew that was going to be okay. That's part of the essence of who you really are.
I think so. And what's interesting, for a very long time growing up, even until my 20s, I always thought, because my mom would always say to me, and she even says it now, and it's okay because you pick your battles, she always says, I'm naive. And I thought, okay, cool, I guess I'm naive. That's just who I am, and it's okay, I'm naive. It's sort of this naivety, as in labeled naive, is leading me to a lot of insanely amazing adventures and moments of humanity, so I'm cool with it. And then I realized, probably even more so when I started writing the book and researching courage and trust and the principles, I realized that, oh, wait a second, maybe it's not so much that I'm naive, but that I trust in myself. And that may seem as naive. So what I mean by that is that I think I started to learn my intuition without knowing that I'm doing that from a very young age. So just knowing what I believe in and what I feel and what my intuition is telling me. And with that, I sort of know when I can follow strangers or when I maybe shouldn't follow a stranger. And most of the time, the intuition is spot on. And that sometimes that's why my mom would say I'm naive, because I would follow a stranger if it feels right. But I also wouldn't follow someone if I feel like, oh, something doesn't feel quite right here, then I wouldn't. So I think it's just trusting yourself, which means that you trust your intuition. And when you can trust yourself, the second trust is then you can trust others. And thirdly, also you can trust that, you know what, the universe always has my back, even when we go through really bad times, which I know, you know, we've all gone through challenging times. It's okay. You know, there is going to be an end eventually, and it will all make sense somehow.
So tell us, what are poop showers?
Oh my God, poop showers. I love them. And, you know, I think, you know that I love making up words and I love sharing content in frameworks and also giving things names. And I've shared this concept with my team when I first realized, oh, wait a second, there is a thing that is called poop showers, which I made up, obviously. And it's really helped my team too. So what they are, let me first share the origin. I mentioned before, when I started the journey and I went home to start, and I went to my mom's house. I always go to my mom's house when I go home, and I also stay with her, which is sometimes challenging, but I just, you know, want to make sure that she knows that I love her. And so I stayed with her, and I got showered with poop showers in the beginning before I headed off on the road. Again, because obviously she loves me, and I'm her only daughter. She's got me and my brother, and my father passed away. And her poop showers were driven by her fear. She was actually, I didn't notice until later into the journey. She thought that I might not come back from this trip. So she showered me with a few things that were not super nice. And that a lot of the things that she said had nothing to do with me or the journey. She said stuff about my dad, about my brother. And I realized that that's just because her behavior is driven by fear. And all I can do is now respond with kindness and come from a place of love. Because if I now go into my own fear or a defense, it's not going to help anyone. So that's where the concept of poop showers came from originally. And then I realized that we all face poop showers in life, whether we are driving down a busy road and somebody is beeping at us because they're having a bad day, and maybe they're screaming out of their window, or, you know, showing us the bird or whatever. That's a poop shower. Or we might come home and maybe our partner is grumpy for some reason, and then we get showered with a poop shower. Or we might pick up the phone with a client and they are grumpy. So what I realized is that the best way to respond to any of these showers is with kindness. And I taught my team this. I said, guys, every now and then people are showering you with these showers, and it's because we don't know why. Maybe they're having a bad day, or something is not going super well. It's nothing personal. The only way to respond is with kindness. And it's really helped. It's really helped them.
And this is so much of what you're talking about, you know, and I'm hoping it's coming through, because this is who you are. And this is a lot of stuff that I've learned from you, because I've always kind of looked at who you are and thought, I wish I could be like her, because it's like nothing ever worries you. But I do know that there are times, and you do write about it in the book, that there are times when like life isn't perfect, that you have your moments, but you're able to pull back out of that really relatively quickly. And you do it a lot of the time with playfulness. And playfulness is your thing. It's very, and you mean your businesses, I mean, Basic Bananas, it's all about playfulness. It's one of your key, you know, whatever your values, whatever it is, it's like, that's who you are, because that's how you approach things. It's very lighthearted. And I know that sometimes, and I've been on the receiving end of this sometimes, is sometimes when you say things, people can take it as being blunt, when in fact what you're doing is you're being playful. How is that kind of, so talk to us about that, the playfulness. And then sometimes, like, and I think in the book you talk about meeting someone and he was a Nazi or something like that, and then you made a playful comment, but it was just a comment that allowed him to start thinking about what the comments he was making.
Yeah, there's so much in that what you just shared that is so supportive of, for anyone listening. And yes, so number one, yes, I don't let too many things phase me. I just don't think I don't think it's a good use of my time to be grumpy about something. I am very clear, and this is maybe a quick thought that I will share, because I feel like, especially for women, I think this is really important. I'm very, very clear on my boundaries. I'm very clear on my values, and adventure, of course, is one of them. Love, trust, courage, impact, and evolution. And I'm very clear on my values and also my boundaries. So when something is happening, or I'm meeting someone who I feel like it's just crossing my boundaries, or it's with a poop shower from my mom, of course I will never abandon her. If I get poop showers from a possible friend, a new friend, I'm very clear. I'm moving away. I don't have time. If I get poop showers from a long time childhood friend, I deal with it, because they're like family. So it's the numbers. First important thing I believe for women is just know your boundaries, know your values, and then respect them yourself first, and also expect others to respect your boundaries. And if they can't respect them, I just move away. I just don't feel like it's that a good use of my time to be upset about stuff. And then the playfulness, yes. I wrote about playfulness in the book, and it took me quite a long time to dissect it, because where it came about is a few people, normally when I speak on stage, which I don't do right now because of COVID, but normally people would come and they say, hey, how do you do this playfulness thing, and how do you do more of that? And I'm like, I don't actually know. It just happens. And so I had to start dissecting it. And it's really what I realized with playfulness. It's this very subtle art to make fun of yourself a little bit. So bring lightheartedness by making fun of yourself first. And it's a very quick way to disarm situations. So often at border crossings, we had a lot of border crossings. I think we went through 13, 14 countries. A lot of border crossings. And usually Mike, who is American, he was like, oh, another crossing, you go first. And of course, normally the border crossing officials, they start off being a little bit like stern, because they have uniforms and it puts them into this state. And my sort of exercise was always to see, can I crack them? And usually I could. And it usually was through playfulness. So by sort of, first of all, showing that I'm on the same page with them. Hey, I'm here. I'm not going to cause any issues. And also I'm making a little bit fun of myself. And it's just a really great way, I feel, to go through life and to bring a little bit of lightheartedness to situations. And you can do this in any situation, even when I mentioned earlier, and again, this is not something I often talk about, when I came back from the journey, I did realize that I had to change something in my relationship, in my marriage. So I broke up, and it was all very amicable. And Christo also, who is amazing, and who you also know, he's an amazing human. And I can talk about it now because he's got a new partner, and she's amazing. And I feel like, he's in a good place and I'm in a good place. And when we broke up, it was also, we had playful moments in there. It was hard, and it really was horrible for a year. I reckon it was just hard emotionally. And I remember one day we were talking about, obviously, separation. And then I sort of playfully said, hey, how about I take the olive oil, because I moved out. I take the olive oil and you keep the Tesla. And it was just like, it was just all playful in a way that in a place that is quite dark. So I think playfulness is just, it's very useful, but it needs to start with not pointing the finger, but with sort of making fun of yourself a little bit first and pointing out your own flaws.
Yeah, and I think that's important, particularly because when women are kind of going through menopause, there's a lot of things going on. Physically, their body's changing, hormones are changing, a lot of emotions are going on. And for a lot of women, they can often feel like their value has diminished because now they're no longer full-time raising children. They're just kind of not sure who they are, where their value lies. And the way you talk is like just bringing the lightness in it, because we can get really heavy about what's going on, and we can poop shower on ourselves because,
Yes.
all of a sudden we're not feeling the best, we're not looking the best, we're having arguments with everyone and this is part of the change. But if we start to lighten up a little bit and just kind of go, well, hang on, let's make a little bit of fun out of this. And as you say, make fun of yourself first, but not in a derogatory way, just in a light way and a way that kind of lifts that energy.
Yeah, in a loving way, exactly, in a loving way, because we can't, and this is something that I wrote about in the previous book that you also read, Perception. We can't often control the circumstances. We can't control that our bodies change or that some things in life happen. We can't control them, but we can always control how we respond. And so if something is changing in my body or in my appearance or in my external life, I may not be able to control that, but I can control how I respond to it. So I can own it. I can maybe own how I feel or how I look or how I have more wrinkles or whatever it is.
So, and this is something that I've always kind of struggled with. In the past, there's always been this thing, we've all got to be fearless, and there used to be events that I went to called Fearless. And I kind of going, well, do we really want to be fearless? What's the difference between being fearless and being courageous?
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? This is a little bit of my personal pet peeve is when people, especially on social media, they advertise this perfect life and like fearless leaders and fearless this. And also yesterday I did a virtual talk for women of entrepreneurs and also their husbands. And somebody said, as women, can we really have it all? She said, a lot of people talk about you can have it all. And I said, the challenge with these statements is that, yes, I do believe that you can have whatever you want. I think whatever you set your mind to, you can go after it. It's like the Richard Branson thing is an example of if you really want something, you make it happen. I jumped on a plane and traveled for 34 hours to go and ask him personally. But maybe sometimes we can't have everything at the same time. Like right now, for example, me personally, I would love to be on a motorbike somewhere again in Tajikistan or in South America. I would love that. I can't right now. First of all, because I can't travel because of COVID, but also secondly, right now with all the changes, I actually have to be here for the businesses. I couldn't just go fluff around right now. And the business actually needs me. So even if the doors were open, the borders, I couldn't have it all right now. I can have right now working on the businesses, and then once I can go and adventure again. So that's the first thing. And then fearlessness. So what I have found is that courage is not about being fearless. It's about taking action despite the fear. So it's about knowing that fear, I also talk about it in the book, and I had to research fear a lot to understand it. What I found is that fear is a natural human behavior. It's usually a reaction that we have when something is causing fear. It's a way to protect us. And it's a way to protect us to either fight, flight, or freeze. And so it's very natural for humans we're not robots. It's natural for us to feel fear. And courage is about taking action, even when we feel the fear.
So get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Talk to us about that.
Oh, I love that. And again, this is something that I always tell my team members and anyone that wants to hear it. I think it's one thing also that I have found through the research is that courage is a skill. So yes, we may be born a little bit with courage, and also of course the first few years of our lives we may have conditioned to either be more courageous or less courageous. I was lucky enough to have a brother who was a bit shy, and he's 2 years older, so he would always push me in front of people. And so I think naturally I had to be a bit more courageous because I wanted to prove myself, and he sort of used me to ask for things, Franziska, an ice cream would be amazing right now, wouldn't it? I'm like, yes, ice cream. Why don't you go ask the parents? Oh yes, I go ask. So he sort of used me a little bit. And so because courage is a skill, it's really cool to get comfortable with the uncomfortable by practicing to be uncomfortable. I personally love, what I talk about in the book is we have these courage boundaries, and everyone has different boundaries. My boundaries are different to yours, and there are places in my life where I'm less courageous. If it was a comparison, there are places in my life where I'm less courageous than you are, and then there are other places where I'm maybe more courageous than you are. So it doesn't really matter. It's just different boundaries. And one way to grow these boundaries in different areas, relationships and business or career and health, family, etc., is by getting uncomfortable, because we have a boundary and we're comfortable inside, and if we go a little bit outside, it feels uncomfortable. So that could be, for example, for me to surf waves when I feel a little bit like, ooh, it's kind of almost borderline too big for me today, but I know that I would be safe. So it's not being reckless. Courage is also not about being reckless. It's not surfing in huge waves that I know I would drown, but surfing in waves that make me a little uncomfortable and paddling out anyway, at least just for one wave, but knowing that I will not drown, or somebody is there with me to look, make sure that.
So that's where trust comes back into it again,
yes.
doesn't it? You trust that, you trust your abilities, and you trust that it'll be okay.
Yes, and then you go anyway, because even if you feel nervous, and you do this in different areas of your life. I remember, and I'm still, my boundaries are still probably a bit tighter than maybe for you in facing difficult conversations. I got better now because I realized I have a boundary in having difficult conversations. I never liked it. I always avoided conflict, and that's my courage boundary. And then I realized, if I keep practicing having difficult conversations and starting these conversations, even though it for me normally would be easier to do the turtle wisdom and pull my head in and just like, oh, it's okay.
It's strange because I see you that you do actually do difficult conversations, particularly in business, because that's where you bring your playfulness in.
I do now, and I really pushed myself to do that a lot, because it was definitely a little bit of a boundary.
Now, I know that you've got another call, so we have to finish up in a minute, but what was your favourite country that you travelled through?
Oh my God, this is such a great question. So one that totally surprised me out of the blue, because people said that I met a few travels along the way that said, we're not going to go through this country because it's a bit dangerous, blah, blah. And I loved it so much, and that was Tajikistan. And Tajikistan is the poorest of all the stans. So there's Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. And Tajikistan is the poorest, and it's also the highest. So in Tajikistan, the mountains are crazy high, and the road that we took is called the Pamir Highway. And the reason why some people avoided it is because the Pamir Highway is famous for connecting Afghanistan and Kyrgyzstan, and it's the second highest highway after one in Nepal. No, in Tibet, actually, the second highest after one in Tibet. And that road is also used to transport heroin from Afghanistan to Kyrgyzstan. And so a few things happen on this road every now and then, where there's a little bit of, unrest because of the drugs, obviously. And we went there, and it blew my mind. The landscapes and the people. I think the people, because they're not used to seeing so many tourists and people maybe on motorbikes like we were, the kindness was just incredible. And then the landscape, because it was so high up, also blew my mind. That was my favorite country.
So that's your favorite country, and maybe this will be the same answer. Your greatest moment of humanity that you experienced?
Yeah, that was in Turkey. So I will never forget that. That was in Turkey. Turkey also blew my mind. With all of these countries actually were my favorite, but Turkey also, the people in Turkey, I would say for me, were some of the kindest, most beautiful. Again, because the majority is Muslim, and I was just blown away by how unjudgmental they were for me not being Muslim. Even kids, I had conversations with a few kids that are obviously very Muslim and growing up in that faith. And we had, one guy asked me about my religion, and I said I'm not religious, and there was zero judgment. We kept hanging out. He gave me his bicycle to ride, his new bicycle. So just so many moments like that blew my mind. And one particularly was in a mountain village. I walked into a tiny grocery store to grab some snacks for the road. And I walked in and started pointing at some stuff because I don't speak Turkish. And then this guy walks in, older guy, and he suddenly looks at me and he talks in Turkish and I didn't understand. And then he goes, makes a sign to follow him. So I walk out of the store and he looked just like a nice guy. So I walked out of the store and followed him down the road. And Mike was standing in front of this shop with the bikes. And he said, Franziska, where are you going? And I said, I'm just following a stranger. He's like, okay. And then I said, hey, look, if I don't come back in 15 minutes, just maybe come and look for me. So Ibrahim, his name was, and I walked down the road a few blocks and then turned right down a little alleyway. And he led me to this bakery. And it was this tiny bakehouse with 3-4 women baking bread. And he bought me a fresh bread. And then he walked, and the ladies were so excited. They took all the selfies. And then he walked me back to the store. And I grabbed the groceries and I walked to the checkout and gave the woman my wallet to pay for my groceries. And the guy just pushes me away and pays for all my groceries. And it was just one of these moments. I've never met this man before. I will never see him again. He just wanted to show his country and the hospitality of his country. And it just blew my mind. That was one of my moments where I just thought, wow, this is unconditional kindness and generosity that is incredibly beautiful.
And you attracted so many of those moments on your trip, didn't you?
So many. We got invited all the time to, like, I never drank so much tea in my entire life.
If someone wants to find the Courage Map and watch your videos, because I highly recommend you watch all of the videos, and I know there's still more coming out, because what are we up to, episode 16?
Yeah, I think there's
your adventures.
There's
Where
one
can
more,
people find more?
So you can, for the book, you can go to thecouragemap.com, and on that page you can see the links where to get the book on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and all these places. And also, even if you don't want to get the book, on that page you can get a journal. So you can download the journal, which is at no cost, and you can it's really cool. It's got a lot of great questions in there. And then for the videos, you can just go to YouTube, and I think if you just type in my name, Franziska Iseli, it will show up. And otherwise you can go to youtube.com/Franziska Iseli, and that should also bring you.
Yeah, I'll put all the links in the show notes anyway. Now, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for sharing your journey of courage, and I really want to thank you for all the videos that you make, because they're so much fun. Even the ones where you're tumbling down the hill, or the bike's tumbling down the hill. But because I really love the way that you just by being you attracted all of this kindness, and it's a reflection of you. I mean, because you put the kindness out, the kindness came back again. And it's just so obvious and so evident with the number of people that you met on this journey, who, as you say, you will never see again. You didn't speak the same language, but you were able to get, free meals and bread and all of that, everything. And it's just because you were just being you, and you were just you were being courageous in being you. So I really want to thank you for that. And just before we finish, from one wise woman to another, what are your words of wisdom that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for today, I would say, take the chances, take the shots. And I'm sharing this wisdom because I read a quote the other day that Michael Jordan, and I'm paraphrasing, I think he said something like, he will only ever fail the shots that he didn't take. And I feel this is such a great lesson in life. Just take the chances, because we will only ever regret the chances that we didn't take. And the ones that we take and fail are great, because we learn from the ones that we fail. And then there are some that we don't fail, and they turn into amazing adventures.
So we don't have to travel on a motorbike across the Silk Road. It's just,
I don't recommend it.
It's just take chances, and that could just be really simple chances of speaking your truth.
Yes.
It could be something really, really simple. It could just be saying, it's time for me to look after me and eat properly today. And that could be all that it is, just that one tiny step of what does it take to make change.
Yes, Absolutely.
I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for being a friend and for what you do in the world and the difference that you have made in the world, because I know that you make such a difference with all of the work you do, not just with what you do within your businesses, but just who you are. And just because you are you, it's just, you know, knowing you, I have learned so much from you, and I really want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for the difference that you make in the world.
Thank you so much. And the same goes for you. Thank you. You're such a light in this world, and you have always worked on projects that you're passionate about and that help other people. And that's exactly what you're doing again now. So thank you also for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. And from everyone who's watching, listening, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Franziska, learning more about courage, learning more about her stories. I highly recommend that you go and read the book, which has got stories in it, and watch her videos. Go and learn what this woman is doing. And yeah, she is amazing. So that's it from me, from my heart to yours. Infinite love and gratitude. I'll be back next week with another Wise Women's Conversation. Bye.
How did you love that conversation with Franziska? She has got so many interesting stories to tell. And as you noticed, as I said, she's got this open heart and she's so trusting in everything that she does. And if you want to learn more about the work that Franziska's doing, she does so much great work in the world, or just get a copy of the book, The Courage Map, you can pop over to her website, which is Franziska Iseli. Now I'll spell that out. So it's FranziskaIseli.com, and I will put the link in the show notes underneath this episode. And you can go there and you can purchase a copy of her book, The Courage Map, but you can also download for free a Courage Map journal. So you can actually start on your own journey of courage and, you know, work through and create something or do something that you've been a little bit afraid to do before. So follow Franziska's, you know, journey and do something courageous. And it might not be as big as what she did. It could just be something really simple, but it's something for you.